Hola a todos. I'm Alex, and today I want to talk about an advice that I often hear from people, which is simply just do less. And I have to admit that this is kind of annoying me by now, because the situation often is I have too much to do, there's just too much around. It may be the job, it may be something I do at home, my housework maybe, my hobbies, everything going together. And yeah, then I have too much on my plate. And this can be even aggravated with maybe illness, or maybe you have to take care of somebody who is ill, or other kinds of obligations that just reduce your available time. And so the time is never enough, you're overwhelmed by all the work you have, and then people come along with a wonderful advice: just do less. And I know they mean well, but honestly, this is not helpful. Because those things that I'm trying to do and to achieve, they are on my to-do list for a reason, you know? There are things I want to do in my job. Most of us have to earn some money, so you need to take care of your job. Maybe you also need this to feel successful and stuff. If you have children, you cannot just, kick out your children because you don't have the time for them. Yes, that is an obligation. You have to be there for your children. Or maybe you have a certain role in some organization, in some NGO maybe, and you're working there and people rely on you. You cannot just say, okay, I'm not doing this today. Or even if it's just a hobby, something that you're doing for yourself, there's a reason why you're doing this. If you're exercising, this is something that's good for your health, and there's a reason why you're doing it. So the big question is, what exactly should I not do? And giving people this very superficial advice of just do less is a bit like even blaming them. Like, why don't you just do less? Yeah, that's the obvious thing in a way. But I feel it's sometimes even blaming me for not being able to cope with my life. And it in a way reduces the real problem. It pretends that it's so easy to do. Why don't you just solve it and do less? Well, the thing is that it's not so easy. You have a reason to have all those things to do. And well, it's not really helpful. And I often find that exactly those people who tell me, oh, just do less, and the next sentence will be, have you actually done this and that for me? Yeah, do less, but not when it comes to me. And that is really not helpful. And even for yourself, I'm actually not exactly sure if I have told this to anyone. So maybe I have, and I apologize. Be careful with this kind of advice. So instead, what can you do? So first, on an individual level, so if you're the one who's stressed, you have too much on your plate, well, one thing that's always a good idea is to be more efficient, to try to squeeze more things into the time you have. You might skip those meetings that do not contribute anything, where you're just sitting around and wasting your time. You could try to avoid distractions, switch off your phone for a while maybe, or just really reduce things. In one situation, at one time I decided to work really a strict 40-hour work week. And that actually has made me more efficient than working just like open-ended, it takes as long as it takes. Because I was more focused. I did not read the news in my working time. I did not, get just distracted so much. I knew the day is over after 8 hours, and I had to use that time. That made me actually more efficient. I could do more in those 40 hours than I did before in, more time. So that is one thing that helps. But efficiency has a limit. So no matter how efficiently you work, your time is over at some point. So to just recognize that there is a problem, that even helps. Just for yourself to say, okay, this is a problem and there's nothing wrong with me. It's just something that I have to cope with. And of course you can use tools like Todo Listo is exactly a tool for time management. And that will give you an overview at least of what you are trying to achieve, and that will help you to better prioritize what you can do. If you're not using it yet and are interested in how to really use this method also to that is kind of implied by Todo Listo. Well, it's a very rough method. You have a lot of freedom, but kind of getting into this habit of organizing your work better. We have a course called Get Organized in 7 Days. So you might want to go there and have a look and get this better overview of what you're trying to achieve. And then when you have this overview and you see, obviously, it's too much, one thing that also helps is to cut down on perfectionism. We often have this idea that, in a way, it's also taking ourselves a bit too serious. Of course, we always see ourselves as the center of the universe, and everything that we do has to be important just because of that. Sometimes it helps to ask yourself, what would happen if I'm not doing that? So sometimes in my life, I was at that extreme point to say, how many people are going to die if I'm not doing this? And if the answer is nobody, it's great. Then you can maybe consider not to do this. Sometimes really people are not really waiting for you to finish this thing. Sometimes it's really something that you might consider important, but maybe think about how many other people are really interested in that. Sometimes the answer can be, yeah, there are many people interested, and maybe in your company the whole production site will be standing still for a week if you're not doing this thing. Yeah, okay, then you better do it, obviously, yeah? I mean, be serious about that. Not everything is unnecessary, of course not. It is necessary. But some of the things you might have rated a bit too high, and you could take yourself a little bit back. And really just thinking about, hey, I'm not the center of the universe. Maybe what I'm doing is not the most important thing in the world. That can sometimes help to just get back from this, I have to do everything. And also recognize kind of ingrained ideas of what you have to do. Sometimes we have just these ideas from, I don't know, our childhood, from society, from wherever it comes from. So for example, for me, for a long time, it was always my paid work, my job is always the first thing. And whatever time is left over on the day, I can use that for the rest, for hobbies or anything, or household or whatever I have to do. But recently I have shifted that viewpoint into, well, no, the main priority of my life is that I'm fine, that I feel good, that I have time for the things that are really important for me, that I can take care of my health. Of course, there are certain limits. I mean, most of us need a job to pay our bills. So there's a certain logic to it, but maybe it's a bit of a priority shift of how much has to go into the job, and if it's always the very first priority. Or I've also talked to many women, to friends of mine who have children. We have this idea of a woman being only successful if she has her children, takes care of her children, at the same time is great in her job, is successful, earns a lot of money, does a lot of things at the same time. So that's too much to ask. I mean, having children is a job by itself. And having an extra job on top is like having 2 jobs, and being perfect in both of them is almost impossible. So don't pressure yourself. Sometimes you really have to be realistic what is possible. And sometimes we see pictures on TV of successful people who seem to achieve anything. But that's not true. I mean, they must cut down on something else, and we must be realistic about what is really achievable. Another thing that you can try to get things sorted out is maybe to get them into a temporal order, to leave things for later. So maybe working in an NGO is maybe a great thing to do, but maybe it takes up too much of your time. And maybe you do that once you retire or your children are out of the house or whatever. So once you have freed up some time, you can use it for something else, but not maybe try to achieve everything at the same time. So this is what you can do if you are the one who's stressed. if you have somebody else, maybe a friend, colleague, whoever, where you see this person is stressed and is trying to do too much, don't say, just do less, please. What you can do is really start for yourself and maybe say, hey, I asked you to do this thing, but I see you have so much on your plate. Don't do it. I'll ask somebody else or I'll do it myself. That really takes work from them. That is helpful. Or even really taking work from them to say, hey, can I take over some of your tasks? Can I do something for you? And this could be like in a workplace. It can also be at home when you see your partner is especially stressed, maybe has more work to do than usually in their job. Maybe you can do something in the household to take the work from them. Of course, after a time you might want to shift back, but at least for a while to really alleviate the situation. Or if you cannot really take the work from those people, maybe you don't have the time yourself, or maybe it doesn't work. Maybe just talking, just sit down and let that other person tell you what they are trying to achieve. And often it's a bit like working with Todo Listo. If you list those things that you're trying to achieve and you tell them somebody else and you talk about it, it might help that other person to cut down on perfectionism. You could just ask questions. How necessary is it? How many people are waiting for you to do this? What would happen if you're not finishing this by this deadline? And this might help this other person really to find a way out of the stress instead of just kind of blaming the person for not doing less. Another thing that comes with this, also for somebody else, but also for yourself, all these things I said, okay, you can cut down, maybe you don't have to do that much. You also have to consider your environment and what people expect from you. It's not so easy to just not do something that you have done before. So for example, maybe the people in your workplace are used to you always working on the weekends. So they know they can call you on the weekend, they know they will get an answer, they can give you something on Friday and it will be done on Monday. If you have trained your environment to believe that and to expect this from you, it's kind of hard to get out of this. Because if you're just not doing it, people will be disappointed, and that makes sense. They are used to you doing these things and suddenly you're not doing them anymore. So when you decide to cut on something that involves other people, whether it's the job or some other kind of organizations where people, or even family, where people rely on you, either you can do it like stepwise. So for example, if you've been used to working on the weekends and you don't want to do that anymore, like maybe you have a dog now, maybe you just got older, maybe whatever, so you don't want to do that anymore, you might just maybe not send email during the weekend. You may be available for others when they call you. You may not just like, I'm not working on weekends, but at least not show it too much anymore. So maybe it will get less over time by just reducing your exhibition of the working on the weekends. You might also explain it to others to say, hey, I have this trouble, I have a certain disease, or I have to take care of somebody, or whatever it is, and make sure they understand the situation. This is still kind of hard because they're still used to it. Habits are a strong thing in humans. They may still be disappointed, so be prepared for that, but it is a way to at least make sure that people know what's going on. Or you could do the really radical thing and just change, for example, your job, to really try a new start. Maybe in the same company take on a different role, work in a different team, or really just change the job. And then at that time, be sure to not overdo it and set the expectations to a level that you can really meet. So when you think about this, how hard it is to get out of your obligations, a good long-term strategy is actually not to take on too many obligations. So even if you want to take on a new hobby, or you want to be part of some club, some NGO, some, where people gather and have something, and you want to take on a role, be sure that you can really sustain that. Just because you have some time left over this week doesn't mean you always have this time. So before taking on longer term obligations, make sure you really have the time and you don't overwhelm yourself, because it's so hard to get out of them. Once people are used to you doing something, it's actually, they will be more disappointed if you're stopping to do something rather than from the first not taking on that job. So be really careful with what you take on yourself, even in times where you have a lot of energy and you have a lot of time. So in all, when you have too much on your plate, yes, doing less is the only actually solution, but it's not easy. It's extremely difficult to get out of such a situation and to reduce the workload. And this is not something that works very quickly. So sometimes it takes some time. If you have to take your environment with you to get them used to, you're not doing all the things that you've done before. And don't be too hard on yourself in this transition, because it's not easy to do, and it's normal that we're trying to do too much. And if you have to inform others, it can take a while. So just get through the situation and make the best of it. Work towards doing less, but recognize the difficulty of this. And so go one step after the other and make sure you find a solution that works for you, because it's at the end of the day, it's your health that will suffer if you're constantly stressed. So you have to find your solution, but it is a hard thing to do. And just work on the transition. So I hope that helps a little bit, at least to show you that you're not alone. It is hard, and step by step you will get there. So I see you next time. Hasta luego.